Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 134 of a year of change and the beginning of week 20. This has sort of bothered me in the past couple of days because I knew it was coming. But we're starting a new week and I know that it just the math itself hasn't been working out. Because this week we're actually going to be starting tweaking our what are called macronutrients. Those are the salt and the fat and the sugar and the protein and the carbs and the fiber. There we go. Couldn't remember it. Those are the main 6 ones anyway that we're going to be working on. But this is something that I'm sort of loosely terming phase 3. Which doesn't make a lot of sense because we didn't really mention phase 1 or phase 2, but we're going to go through that. So, when we first started, 20 weeks ago, 19 weeks ago, and this is why it's bothering me, is we started just sort of roughly tracking our food just to get an idea as to where we stood. We weren't really watching the calories. We were just tracking absolutely everything to see what it looked like. And then we just started saying, okay, we need to meet that calorie goal, but just with food. And then we slowly started adding in fluids and we started adding in condiments. Then around week 9, because we had just finished 8 weeks of that, which was a nice block of numbers. And then week 9, we started in with the exercise. And we started in just doing basic, just moving while you're watching the video. That increased to half an hour, and then just once a day, and then splitting that up into two times a week, and then 3 times a week, which is where you are now. So you should be roughly around, half an hour of moderate exercise 3 times a week. Some of you may be doing more, which is great. And so I thought, then the next phase would be when we start tweaking our foods. And that's what we've been talking about for a long, long time. And I kept saying, it's a few weeks away, and then it's a couple of weeks away. And I realized over the past couple of days that it's not landing on a very good day. It's technically, we did 8 weeks, started exercise, which is fine. That makes sense. It's not exactly 10, but it's 8 and it's fine. It's an even number. And now we just finished 19 weeks and we're starting, and it's driving me nuts. But I don't want to say, we're going to skip this week and we're going to actually start because we want to finish after 20 weeks. We're already here. We're going to do it. We've been preparing for the past week. And I've been preparing for the past week, and those are the numbers I'm going to show you. Don't know what happened there. But I do have some numbers that I'm going to show. There's a lot of math going on. Not a lot of math, just a lot of numbers. But I have also learned a little bit more about sodium intake and the difference between a recommended daily allowance and an upper limit, which is what I've been going by. So, as per usual, we're going to start off this week, though. Weigh yourself 3 times. Take the highest number. That's just going to sort of be our baseline. I know we keep saying that, but it's always good to remind people. I had to do mine today, and there was two different weights. And the first one was like, yay! And then the second one was, oh. And the second one confirmed the awe. Not as much as I would like, but it's still progress. So we're good. Anyway, we're going to start things off here. Best thing to probably do would be to start with my own numbers to show you where I stand. This isn't... Originally, I didn't think it was as bad as I thought it was going to be, if that makes any sense. I had an idea as to how bad things were going to be, and then when I did all the numbers, I went, that's not too bad. And then I realized there was a second number to sodium, and went, that is kind of bad. So we're going to do that first. So actually, I'll start with this. This is what my sodium levels look like for the following, or for the past week. I've taken out the numbers on the graph itself, just to make it easier to read. That red line, though, that is we'll say the recommendation for now. That is your goal, is 2,300 milligrams per day. Now, we're not going to meet it every single day, but overall, the course of a week, that's what we're trying to look for, is just so that at the end of that week, that averages out to around 2,300. Or so I thought. Here's why. Actually, no. We're going to do my numbers. No, we'll do this first. The 2,300 milligrams, I thought, was a recommended daily allowance. Like they say, this is what you should be getting every day. It's not exactly true. Sodium acts a little bit differently than things like, calories or fat or carbohydrates and stuff like that. There are 2 separate numbers that they actually need to go through. And this is, confirmed with the American Heart Association and with Canada Health. So I've gone through both of these. So these are the numbers that we really should be looking at. Number one, and this is by their recommendation, I'm going to have to look at my cheat sheet, is the adequate intake level. Sorry. The adequate intake level of sodium this is the amount of sodium that your body really needs. Anything more than that, it isn't really going to start causing any harmful effects, but you don't really need it. So this is the number, and that is 1,500 milligrams per day. Anything above that is just extra. We don't really need it. Our body's going to sweat it out. It's not going to really do anything with it. It's just sort of extra lying around in case something happens. That wasn't the number I was aware of. That's the number, ideally, that we want to hit for our goal. However, baby steps. So, the number that we're actually looking for right now, anyway, is the number that I thought was the recommended daily allowance, which is not the case. It's the 2,300 milligrams, and that's the one I've been sort of talking about, saying, we need to get to that point. That is called the tolerable upper intake limit. Did I get that right? Yes, I did. What that means is that anything above 2,300, you start getting into health problems. So technically, the recommended daily allowance is more of a range than anything else. From 1,500 a day to 2,300 a day, and as you can see, mine is way above that, but we'll get to that. Anywhere in between there, you're doing all right. Anything above 2,300, that's when you start getting into problems. Into heart problems, and that's when you get the high blood pressure and everything else and all the other good stuff. So for now, we're still going to try to hit that 2,300 goal, because for a lot of us, it's going to be very difficult to just go, boom, drop down to 1,500 right away. And again, just like the exercise and the calories alone and everything else, you can't go from a 3,000 a day calorie habit down to 1,200 in a day and just say, I'm going to stick with it. Of course I am. It's simply not going to work. So, baby steps. We're going to start. And I think, although for some of us, myself included, this is going to be really tough, because trying to get down below that 2,300 on average, especially when you eat a lot of salty things, and I eat a lot of extra salt and everything else, it is going to be tough. But I think it's a good place to start, because beneath that, then we pretty much cut off a lot of health concerns. So, here's what we're going to look at. These are my numbers for the past week. This is going from Sunday to Saturday. So at the start of last week, the reason why that first one is so high, keep in mind that line, 2,300 milligrams. That Sunday, and I have to check my cheat sheet because these are very specific numbers, I had 8,496 milligrams of sodium. This, by the way, does not include the 2 times that I actually put salt on my food. So we'll add over the week, another half teaspoon, because I didn't actually use a whole lot, which was good. And then a half a teaspoon is roughly that 2,300 milligrams, to give you an idea. So half a teaspoon of salt a day is all that's the upper limit of what we need. Anyway, so 8,496 milligrams on Sunday. That was the day that I went way, way over and ended up eating 4,000 calories for the run of the day. So, it appears as if I made up for it on Monday, probably from feeling guilty about eating. I only had 1,407 milligrams of sodium throughout the day. So that's not too bad. So it's doable. We can get there. And Monday doesn't stand out in my head as anything like, it was such a horrible day, I had to sort of starve myself. I just ate normally, like what I normally do. I just didn't happen to eat a lot of sodium. Tuesday, 2,148 milligrams. So I'm still below. 2 days in a row where I'm below. Things are good. At that stage, we know that it's possible, that we can do it. Wednesday, then I went over. 3,294 milligrams. So way above where I need to be. Thursday, above again, 2,797 milligrams. Friday, that was a really rough day where I really was craving everything, but I didn't give in a whole lot, but I did still go over 3,175 milligrams. And then yesterday, Saturday, 2,782. There we go. Those are all of our numbers for the week. My eyebrow's itchy. I'm sorry. There we go. So, when you take all that into account, over 7 days, I took in 24,099 milligrams of sodium, which is not good. Because if you look at those two numbers, the upper limits, the upper limit of it is should have been, I didn't actually mark that down, 2,300 times 7, I'm trying to remember, is 16,100. So there we go. So when you're looking at, there we go. I do have the numbers written down. Sorry. See, I prepare. Fine. Ignore it. So at the upper limit, I should have had 16,100 milligrams over the week. The recommended one, the required amount, or what's it called? Adequate intake level. The point that you just don't really need anymore is much lower. It is 10,500 milligrams. So, and you're averaging out to around, for me anyway, for that week, I averaged 3,443 milligrams per day, which is way too much. But this is where I say it was not really as bad as I thought it was going to be. And here's why. When I was looking at just the upper limit of that, the 2,300 milligrams, that's what I thought was a recommended daily intake. So I thought, okay, we have a little bit of leeway. We can sort of float back and forth. It's not going to be as bad. And including the really bad Sunday that I had, I'm averaging about, this is why it's not great, I'm averaging around 1.5 times the upper limit. Okay, so that is still far too much salt. But at the time I thought, well, it's recommended daily. It's a good starting point. I know where I am and I can lower that down. That shouldn't be a problem. However, it is really 1.5 times the healthy limit of salt. At the time I thought before I even started tracking, I figured the amount of salt that I actually use was going to be at least 2 times as much, possibly 3, and possibly even higher than that. I use a tremendous amount of salt on my food. Or I did, anyway, I should say. Because I knew that this was coming, so I've gradually been sort of putting just less on, things like that. However, the main thing is that at the, I can never remember it, adequate intake level. Why can I not remember that? At the adequate intake level, the amount that I really need, that anything above that is just sort of extraneous sodium, I'm actually 2.3 times the amount that I should be having. So that one's a little more realistic. That one is pretty, it's still lower than I thought it was going to be. It's still tremendously high. I mean, I'm eating 2.5 times the amount of salt that I actually need. But it's lower than I thought it was going to be, even at that end. So it's not as bad, and it's going to be manageable. So for this week, we're going to start with the 2,300. We're going to use the upper level limit, or the tolerable upper intake limit. Level. Yeah. Tolerable upper intake level is the number that we're going to be using, okay? As we progress, then yes, you know what range you need to work with. You've got between 1,500 and 2,300 a day. If we can keep it in between that, that's still good. It's just anything above 2,300, that's when your heart explodes. So, that's what we need to work on. And my nose is itchy. Sorry. There we go. So that is our goal for this week. Overall, what we want to look at, though, is an average. All right? And you're not going to get there right away. You're not going to get there in the first week. Sorry. No, don't scratch it again because it'll look like you're picking your nose. But I'm not. It's good. Anyway, lost my train of thought. Throughout the run of a week, we want to have an overall average. So if we can average around 2,300, that's our goal. You're not going to hit it right away. If you're over for the week, that's fine. If you're under for the week, then great. But just like counting calories and things like that, we're going to have days where things are going to go over. Especially with the fact that with sodium, it's a little bit different. Because with calories, you can look at it and say, okay, well, I can't eat any more today, or, I need to plan out a little bit in advance, so I'll eat less than I did before. With sodium, by the, right now especially, unless you've already been buying it, your house is filled with it. Like, whatever food that you have is going to have sodium in it. So it's not, realistic to say, oh, well, you need to hit your goal this week. Because that causes you're like, okay, well, I need to go buy all low sodium stuff. Which you don't need to do. And don't if you want to, you certainly can. I'm not going to start buying everything low sodium, low sodium, low sodium, low sodium, all across the board. What I am going to start doing, though, is when I am going to buy something, I just need to be aware of the amount of sodium that's in there so I can tweak the amount that I eat, which is going to help with, the volume of food anyway. If there's something that I would normally buy that is going to taste relatively the same with low sodium and it's not going to hurt, then yeah, I'm probably going to do that. But I'm not going to go out, and I don't want you to do this either. I don't want you to go out and restock your entire house with low sodium stuff. As you're buying more groceries and things, as things progress, then certainly, if you want, go do that. But don't just all of a sudden say, oh, I need to go spend $300 on groceries and buy all low sodium shit. It's not going to work that way. Again, these are baby steps all the way along. And eventually we are going to get, I mean, our goal, I suppose, technically would be to get around 1,500. But, your body is going to expend that. We're exercising. It doesn't really need any more for exercise or anything like that. But if we can get within that range of 1,500, for me anyway, I'm thinking between 1,500 and 2,000, that would be good. That's our end goal, is to be within that range. That way we know we're getting enough sodium. We aren't really getting too close to that upper limit. And that way, if you do have a bad day, it's still going to roughly even out at the end of it. So our main goal for the next week and for the next 20 plus 50, 32 weeks. Jeez, I can't do any math. 33, because technically it's the beginning of week 20 and not the end of week 19, which is driving me nuts, because I really should have started this on week 21, but then I've already been talking about it, and I didn't want to say, no, we aren't going to do it. We already had that discussion, so it's fine. Anyway, so our main goal is to get within that range. And I think it's something that we can do. If I certainly can do it, then you guys can do it. Because my main problem is salt. We'll be doing this with fat and with sugar later on. I'm thinking probably 4 weeks at a time just to get this down. And then we'll start working on the good stuff, like protein and carbohydrates and fiber, which I almost forgot last time. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble now. Need to get back in focus and everything else. So when you're looking at your sodium levels, for the next couple of weeks anyway, until we really start moving towards, knowing where we need to eat and, or not where, but what we need to eat and where our sodium is coming from, you want to look at your overall sodium intake. So at the end of a week, if you average it over 7 days, you're looking at 16,100 milligrams. So let's just even it out to 16,000. And if you want, you can say, okay, 15,000. There we go. You can keep track of it on MyFitnessPal. There are little things you can go in there on the app that'll show you your nutrition, and sodium is in there. There are some things you're going to be scanning or entering that they aren't going to register the sodium. That's okay. Don't worry about those. Those little things are going to happen every now and then. But I just figure 16,000 or 15,000 or whatever you decide to do, it's a round number that you can easily remember. And you can say, okay, at the end of midweek, take a quick look at it and say, okay, obviously I'm doing okay. I can keep eating the way I'm eating, or I need to cut things off, or it's really, really low, so I can have an extra piece of pizza or whatever it is. I don't want to get into that, though, to say, I should correct that. I don't want to get into a thing saying, oh, well, just like the calories, I have 400 calories left for the day. What else can I eat? If you're not hungry, then leave those calories there. Same thing with sodium. This one is going to take a little bit more time and a little bit, it's a word, Google it. A little bit more, I was going to say attention, but sort of does. A little bit more dedication to it, because it's not something that we readily think of. Some of you might be. I mean, some of you might already be at this stage, and that's fine. But I'm picking sodium because this is the hardest thing for me to do. So I don't want to just say, oh yeah, track your sugar, it's fine. Because it's not going to be fine for a lot of people. Same thing with fat. To say, nope, don't worry about your fat, just track it, it's fine, it'll be good. I want to start with something that's hardest for me so that I have at least some frame of reference when I start talking about fat and sugar. Now, fat and sugar, I mean, when I'm going through stuff, I might look at it and go, God, I'm way, way over. This is going to be even worse. But for me, that's what I'm looking at is my salt intake and sodium and everything else. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to start repeating myself. I know I am, because I think I've already started. So for this week and for the next 32 weeks or however long we're going to be doing this, but mainly for the next 4 weeks is really where we're going to sort of really be focusing in on sodium. So for the next 4 weeks, your allowance is roughly 16,000 milligrams for the week. However you decide to do that is up to you. If you go over, then you go over. Don't panic. It'll be okay. Just be aware of it. At the end of the week, go through and say, okay, you know what? I've had a lot of processed meats, or I had this or that. because that's what I found for me anyways. Processed meats were the ones that really put me over. So you can take a look at it and say, okay, well, I just need to, tweak this and maybe make my own stuff this way or add in something there. That's where we need to look at. We've been watching this for a week, so some of you may already know where your weak points are. But in general, again, this is going to be sort of a slow lowering of our sodium levels. So our main goal right now is to get around the 2300 mark. Try to stay below that as much as we can. We aren't going to do it all week. And just like sharing everything else, I'll be sharing, like you can go up, you can see my food diary every single day. You'll be able to go in, I don't know if you can go in and see my sodium levels or not. I'll keep you updated anyway, one way or the other. And we'll just sort of work on this so that we can get to a stage where we're in that nice, comfortable range between 1,500 and 2,300. I'm going to say about 2,000 for me, because I think if that's the end goal is around 2,000, then we can sort of fluctuate over and above it and over and below it. Above it and below it. See what happens? I just start babbling and then I just don't make any sense. Anyway, that's our end goal. But for this week and for the next 4 weeks, this is what we'll do. Over the next 4 weeks, we need to get it below that 2,300. So that's what we're working towards. So do your best to try to get it below there. If you can get it below there in the first week and maintain it, terrific. But I think at the end of 4 weeks, getting it below that 2,300 milligrams a day, average, because we are going to have days where you're over, some days when you're under, that's fine. We're talking about the average needs to be, when you go into MyFitnessPal, you can look at the average at the end of the week. So every Sunday or whatever day you do your weigh-in, whatever day you're watching this is the start of your week, then go back in, look at the past 7 days. It's going to show you that average. And you'll be able to look at it and say, okay, as long as that's the average is 2,300 or below, that's our goal for the next 4 weeks. And then we'll move on to fat and then sugar, and then we'll start tweaking those again. And then we'll really start lowering those as we're upping the good stuff so that we can tweak protein and carbohydrates and fiber, and that will sort of get rid of some of the sodium as well. And in the end, everything will get nice and even out, and we'll be eating properly. We'll be eating the right amounts of our nutrients that we need. We'll be eating the right amount of food, eating the right amount of calories, and we'll be doing exercise. So we'll have like a proper healthy lifestyle at the end of it. Anyway, that is it for this video. So I'm going to leave this here. It'll give us a good way to start. Go up to MyFitnessPal, take a look around at the different charts that you can look at for your sodium. Just sort of get used to looking at the sodium on the back of different packages and, sort of tweaking it that way. You don't have to, again, don't go out and buy a whole ton of low sodium stuff. If you want to, you certainly can, but we want to take this as slowly as possible so that we know it's going to stick. Sorry. So that's our main thing, is trying to tweak things back and forth the way that they are, go that way, and then I'll update you every single week as to how I'm doing, and you can update me how you're doing if you're tweaking the sodium thing, and we'll just sort of go from there. But for right now, that's it for this video, so thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me, and in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.